Get ready to rethink everything you thought you knew about your toothbrush, because things are about to get a little weird.
Let's just say if you were thinking about skipping brushing tonight, you might want to reconsider.
Okay, so for this deep dive, we're taking a close look at a new study
Mm-hmm.
published on October 9th, 2024, in the journal Frontiers in Microbiomes. And trust me, it's a wild ride through the world of viruses living on your toothbrush.
We're going way beyond the "you that's gross" factor here, though. This is about uncovering a hidden world that could change the way we think about our health.
It's more like, whoa, that's cool, right? I mean, they found over 600 types of bacteriophages on these toothbrushes. That's an incredible amount of diversity. It makes you wonder what else we're missing in these microscopic worlds.
And you're right to be curious. Many of these viruses were completely new to science. This really highlights how much we still have to learn about the viromes, the virus ecosystems that exist literally everywhere, even on the things we use every day.
Okay, before anyone freaks out and throws out their toothbrush, though, these viruses aren't here to harm us, right?
That's right. Bacteriophages, which we sometimes shorten to phages, only target bacteria. They don't infect human cells.
So they're not going to turn me into some kind of supervillain.
Not unless you were hoping to become the brushing menace.
Okay, good to know. But seriously, my toothbrush should have bacteria on it, shouldn't it? I mean, that's the whole point of brushing, right?
That's where it gets even more interesting. This study wasn't just looking at individual bacteria. They were focused on something called biofilms.
Biofilm sounds kind of sci-fi, like something out of Star Trek.
Well, in a way they are. Imagine a bustling city where bacteria live together in this complex, structured community. That's a biofilm. They can form on all sorts of surfaces, and they're incredibly resilient.
So my toothbrush is like a microscopic city of bacteria, and these phages are part of that ecosystem.
Exactly. And what the researchers wanted to know was what kinds of viruses are hanging out in these toothbrush biofilms, and what can they tell us about this hidden world?
And that's what we're going to find out right.
Let's dive right in.
So we're talking about my toothbrush being a bacteria metropolis complete with its own viral inhabitants. But the researchers didn't stop there, did they?
You know how much scientists love a good comparison? They took a look at showerheads, too.
Showerheads. Now, why would they do that? What do showerheads have to do with my toothbrush?
Well, think about it. Your showerhead is warm, wet, and has water constantly flowing over it. It's basically a luxury condo for certain types of bacteria, prime real estate for building biofilms.
Okay, that makes sense. So both toothbrushes and showerheads have these biofilms, but they're both exposed to tap water, right? Did the researchers find the same viruses in both places?
That was the million-dollar question. And what they discovered was pretty surprising. Even though both toothbrushes and showerheads are exposed to the same water, their viromes, those viral ecosystems we talked about, were vastly different.
Wait, really? So even though they're right next to each other in my bathroom, my toothbrush and showerhead have totally different viruses living on them?
Exactly. They found no shared core group of viruses. It really highlights how specialized these microbial communities can be.
So what's going on here? Why are the viruses so different if they're both getting a dose of the same tap water?
It all comes down to the types of bacteria present in each biofilm. Remember, these phages are very picky eaters. They've evolved to target specific bacteria.
Right, like a lock and key.
Exactly. And your toothbrush, because it spends its time in your mouth, has a lot of bacteria that are specifically adapted to living in, well...
You mean my mouth is like its own unique ecosystem?
Absolutely. The bacteria in your mouth are different from the bacteria on your skin, which are different from the bacteria in your gut. And each of those environments will attract its own unique set of phages.
So even though my toothbrush and showerhead are both exposed to tap water, the specific bacteria living in those biofilms are different, which means the viruses are different too.
You got it. It's a fascinating example of how even seemingly similar environments can have vastly different microscopic ecosystems.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. But speaking of minds being blown, you mentioned earlier that this research goes beyond just the ew factor. Can we talk more about that? What's the bigger picture here?
Absolutely. This research wasn't just about cataloging viruses on everyday objects. It was driven by a specific goal: understanding a type of bacteria called Mycobacterium.
Mycobacterium. That rings a bell. Mycobacterium. Isn't that the bacteria that causes tuberculosis?
You got it. Mycobacterium is a pretty diverse group of bacteria, but it includes the one responsible for tuberculosis, or TB for short. And TB is still a major health concern around the world.
Okay, so that's a pretty big deal. But why focus on Mycobacterium on toothbrushes and showerheads?
Well, remember how we were talking about showerheads being like luxury condos for bacteria? It turns out they're particularly good at harboring Mycobacterium, especially those connected to municipal water systems.
So the researchers chose to study showerheads because they wanted to find out more about the viruses that infect Mycobacterium.
Precisely. By studying the phages that infect Mycobacterium in showerheads, the researchers hope to gain a better understanding of these viruses and how they could be used to fight infections.
Okay, so you're talking about phage therapy. And this is where things get really exciting for me. You're telling me these viruses, these phages, could be the key to fighting drug-resistant bacteria.
You're catching on quickly. We've been battling bacterial infections with antibiotics for decades now, and it's become clear that we need new strategies. Antibiotic resistance is a growing threat, and phages could be a powerful weapon in our arsenal.
I can see why you're excited. But for those of us who aren't scientists, can you break down how phage therapy actually works?
Imagine you have a team of highly skilled ninjas, and their only mission is to seek and destroy a specific enemy. That's what phages are like. They're incredibly specific about which bacteria they infect. They lock onto their target, inject their genetic material, and hijack the bacteria's machinery to make copies of themselves. Eventually, the bacteria burst open, releasing more phages to go after other bacteria.
Wow, talk about a hostile takeover. So unlike antibiotics, which can wipe out both good and bad bacteriophages, could be used to target specific pathogens like Mycobacterium without harming the beneficial bacteria in our bodies.
Exactly. Phage therapy could be a game changer in the fight against antibiotic resistance. And this research, by uncovering the diversity of phages on everyday objects like showerheads, brings us one step closer to that reality.
So what you're saying is my toothbrush, that thing I use to fight morning breath, might hold the key to fighting superbugs? That's pretty wild. And what's even more amazing is that we're just scratching the surface. There's a whole universe of viruses out there just waiting to be discovered. And these viruses, as strange as it sounds, could hold the solutions to some of the biggest health challenges we face. It's mind-blowing.
It really is. Once again, it's been a pleasure exploring the fascinating world of microbes with you.
The pleasure's all mine. Until next time.